this the reading room?
Yes, I'm Saad Manzoor.
And I'm Travis Howard.
This is Reading Room Talk. Thank you for pressing play.
Welcome, everyone. Yes.
Thank you for pressing play. And we have a dermatologist in the building, part of the road specialties.
Hello.
We love talking to our remote specialties.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we have Dr. Tola Oyesanya here with us. How are you today?
Hello. I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Oh, we're doing well.
Good.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time.
Yes, thank you for making the time. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Me. Thank you so much.
No problem. No, we know you're world famous, so we're gonna start asking you some questions, and we can't wait to hear these answers. So my first question is, take us back to medical school. Can you tell me what your toughest class or rotation in medical school was?
I had the toughest time during my OBGYN rotation in my third year.
Not uncommon. Uncommon answer.
It's not an easy one. That's for sure.
It's not. What made it difficult, or what was challenging
for me? I actually really wanted to go into OBGYN.
Oh, yes.
And maybe I was an eager medical student, or maybe it was just a little bit more challenging because I tend to kind of put myself out there more. I'll speak up quickly. I may give my opinion even maybe when I could have maybe held back. And
oh no, these are positive characteristics though.
Sure.
Eventually.
I thought they were, but they were
eventually. Yes.
By everybody. So there was one resident who I was working closely with.
No shout out.
And the resident was a male. Remember, OBGYN is female dominated, you'd say, probably, right?
Of course.
You know, he was blonde. He looked like a Ken doll, if you ask me.
Okay.
He was pretty boy.
Right.
And I was working with him, and I had an opinion about like a patient who was experiencing like hot flashes and in relation to menopause. And I had been reading because I was a studier back then. I used to study all the time. And I had read about a supplement called black cohosh that could help with night flashes or I should say hot flashes. And I brought it up to my resident as I was about to present to the attending. He was like, no, I would definitely never use that. And I'm like, well, it's in this review book, so.
Yep.
So I presented to the attending and I said, well, what about black cohosh? And the attending liked it, suggested it to the patient. That ended up being the plan. But from then on, the resident was like, you deliberately disobeyed me, you know?
Ego time. Yep.
I hate that.
Right. So from then on, he just had it out for me. Just like was kind of limiting my experiences, like wouldn't let me catch a baby, which is always what the medical students want to do because
absolutely
the first thing you want to do is, deliver a baby in OBGYN. And so the whole rotation, I was never able to deliver a baby.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And
That's
then
crazy.
all of the residents thought that like they just seemed to like kind of approach me with caution. Oh, I heard about you. And then at the final end of the rotation, we were asked to select people who we thought could fairly evaluate us, and you have to select, three attendings and residents. Why did this resident go out of his way to evaluate me despite not being asked?
Wow.
Oh, wow. They could do that. Okay, a couple of things. You can select who you wanted to evaluate you
at that time.
That's amazing.
Right.
That's great.
Because then you don't want to select someone who you have no interaction with, who can't.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I thought
so you don't have to pick Ken doll. Like that's the whole point.
Exactly. And then he went and wrote me a very negative evaluation. This medical student oversteps the boundary of a medical student. She is overconfident and like all these things. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
But I'm so happy you had the strength to push that aside, because one thing that I think is lacking a lot of times for medical students is that confidence, to speak up. And I mean, I think now medical students are feeling more comfortable to do so. I think there's a shift, if you will. But, and a negative evaluation that affects your grade when you're just trying to succeed that's claiming you're too confident, I mean, that could be very damaging.
Mhm.
That's the one thing I hated about medical school was that subjectivity
Very.
It's so
and a
subjective.
clash in ego could
Mhm.
really just affect your success.
Absolutely.
And
Exactly.
it's a challenge. It is a real challenge, and I think that at medical to change that. But man,
Mhm.
do I tell you that thing? I had a similar experience too, so I feel your pain.
That's crazy. And this was a rotation you wanted to
This was
potentially go into residency.
it was, and so I definitely was disheartened.
Mhm.
I saw another colleague of mine at that time doing the same thing as me, succeeding doing it. She was blonde. Okay, like
Yes.
so
Yes.
she ended up going
Please.
into OBGYN, and that's fine because at the end of the day, I'm glad this happened
Okay.
because
Mhm.
it pushed me away from OBGYN. I explored other
Mhm.
fields. Here I am in derm. I'm
Yep.
much happier in derm.
There you go.
Exactly.
For many reasons, I could say a few. One of them is probably lifestyle. Like I
Of course.
sleep in hospitals.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, I'm done at 5 p.m. and I can leave my work at home unless I'm on call, which still I leave my work, somewhere
Exactly.
if I can. And so,
That's so interesting. Now, where did you go to medical school?
Michigan.
That's so interesting because, like, Michigan is, we've been talking about some of the predominantly, white institutions that are like kind of like HBCUs. I feel like Michigan is kind of like a HBCU where like you can feel like, like there's enough African Americans
That
there
was
where
not my experience. So I definitely had,
interesting.
people I could rely on. I had I'd say out of 170 students, we had 14 African American or African students, which is decent, but it's less than 10%.
It's still less than 10%.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 And
Yeah.
so we actually were close knit with the group ahead of us because, 1
You
year
had
ahead
to
of
be.
still within M1, M2. We were very close knit with them. I still remain close with those kids.
Yeah.
Today. And it's hard. You have to stick together. I think I did a good job of still like interacting with everybody, but
Mhm.
definitely have struggles that are
It's
specific
unique.
to
Yeah. No, those
to
are those are unique struggles.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
you have to overcome those to like make it, and you made it big time. So take us back. So where did you grow up? Where is your family from? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was born in the U.S., but my parents immigrated here from Nigeria in
Mm-hmm.
1985, and my dad is also a physician. So he was family medicine
Mm-hmm.
in the Midwest. He was trained in Nigeria. As you may know, when you come from another country and you are a medical doctor, they basically make you repeat your training here.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. My dad
And
always tells these terrible stories of the struggles he had, having to sit for what they call the flex exam back in the 80s and 90s,
Yep.
oh
and
yes.
having to, try to match a residency program. He tells me stories about entrenched racism in the 80s and the 70s and 80s that he had to try
Absolutely.
to fight through. In fact, he never finished his residency. He worked as a general practitioner, which you can do. You can kind of do general medicine
Oh,
without
that's
a residency
interesting.
program, and he did that.
Oh
He did
wow. And
that
this
for
is with the
many.
flex exam. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
because he passed his flex, and so in
uh-huh.
Wisconsin, you can, as long as you pass your license. Sorry, as long as you pass your flex exam, you can
Mm-hmm.
practice. And so he did that, and he had his own practice for at least 20 years, and he retired when I
Wow.
was in medical school.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. And he didn't let it stop him, which is
No,
great. Now, do you feel like you kind of got that, go get itness from him? Or do
I
you feel
do.
like that was just kind of,
No, I definitely take after my dad in perseverance,
Mhm.
putting yourself
mm-hmm.
out there, that kind of energy, and not
Yes.
go for an answer. That was all demonstrated with my parents for sure. My mom, she was a social worker when she came to this country, and she
Mm-hmm.
retrained to become a nurse, and that was how they stayed in the country. My dad was here on a
Yeah.
student visa, and then my mom
Mm-hmm.
was able to get a green card because she was a nurse and nurses were in shortage at that time.
That's the hustle. That's
Yep.
how you got to do it. That's amazing. So I was going to say, I feel like you matching into derm was probably easier than your dad matching into family medicine coming from Nigeria.
Maybe
Because
it will be challenging.
The stories are it's tough. Don't tell him that.
No, he would. So it's funny though. I wanted to take after my dad's footsteps, and he was very encouraging of me going into a specialty. And I think that's because he became very burned out as a family practice doc. But I think, that was still, he practiced mostly in the 90s when there weren't hospitalists, when there wasn't support. If he was, taking care of a patient who was admitted to the hospital and it was one of his patients, he was going to the hospital to go around on them, which does not exist now, really, because we have hospitalists to support that kind of.
Yeah, the groups are different. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like you'd have to, basically back in the day, you'd have to be in clinic all day. And then after clinic, you have to go visit your patients that are in the hospital as well. So that's
nonstop work.
Tough.
So my dad definitely worked 7 days a week growing up. I remember him writing notes on Sundays, always working. So
committed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow, that's crazy. Now, so you grew up in Milwaukee. Now, did you end up in Milwaukee for undergrad as well, or did you?
So I went to Wisconsin, Madison, like Badger.
Badger. Okay.
Yeah. And I followed my brother was there. He was in pharmacy school. So I was like, nice. Oh, makes sense. I'll do the same. And my sister, younger than me, she did the same. We were all in Wisconsin at one point. And so
gotcha.
My brother's a pharmacist now. He's still in Wisconsin. My sister is, she went to nursing school and then she actually pursued a PhD. So she does nursing research. And so she does a PhD and she works with postdoctorate students at Duke. And so everyone is kind of in the medical field.
Oh, your parents must be so proud.
Yes,
they are. And the funny thing is, they didn't push it. It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, that's
they
good.
Must have made it look good.
They made it look good. They made it look good.
They must have.
Exactly. Oh, that's so nice. So, so tell us, how was the experience? Trying to go from Wisconsin from undergrad to med school. How was your application process, and how did that work out for you?
That was a challenge for sure. So I was a bit of a nerd in college. I studied more and more, and too much probably if I look back on it. But I had some friends who were doing the same thing, so we kind of all supported each other. We would have study groups in the library. We're staying there till late at night. Supporting each other through big exams. And so I found whenever I was preparing for the MCAT, step 1, step 2, and all those things, to always study in a group. And that helps to keep the motivation going when you want to quit. There's other people And so I still talk to those friends today, and we all went to medical school. We all finished and are now attending, and so that was supportive. I did a summer program at the University of Chicago, which I credit with the only reason I'm in medical school now. Because
which program was that?
It was called PSOMER. And it was a research program focused for underrepresented minorities. And so it was a great opportunity to have a research experience. And I hadn't previously had a significant one. I did some research in college, but it wasn't like a really meaningful experience. And then we had the opportunity to be mentored. And so my mentor was Dr. Bill McDade.
Nice, shout out.
And he was the Dean of Diversity at UChicago. And if not for that man, I would not have applied to medical school.
Oh wow! What did he do for you in the process?
So I had taken the MCAT and I had not scored very highly. It was, I think the scoring has totally changed. So it's hard to compare. But it was not comparable to my GPA, which was very strong. So I was discouraged. And Bill McDade told me to take the MCAT again. But I could not bring myself to do it. So I didn't. And he's like, okay, you could just apply and see what happens. But then the next hurdle for me was the personal statement. And I could not put pen to paper to write something meaningful for this personal statement. I could not do it. And I was like not going to apply. I told myself, you know, maybe it's not for me. Maybe I'll just apply to pharmacy school like my brother. And I was just very discouraged in finding other alternatives. That really wasn't what I wanted to do, but it was just like,
So why did you feel discouraged? Were you given like information that wasn't correct, or did you just feel like
it was more like I had a strong GPA, but my MCAT, I was just feeling like I wasn't going to be accepted to medical school anyway. So then with that information, I was like, oh, this person's name is just another hurdle. I can't do it.
That's not uncommon. I think like a lot of that happens to a lot of people because, you know, the MCAT's a standardized test. And, you know, whenever you're applying and you read online and you like hop on like studentdoctor.net, they're like, oh, if you don't get like a 40, don't even try, you know, and that's not correct. Like you need to give yourself a shot. Like, especially if you put in 3 or 4 years of like very hard undergrad work and have a very high GPA and you've done all the extracurriculars, you should give yourself a chance, you know, make them say no.
Absolutely.
Like, don't say no to yourself.
Because you're more than a test score. And that concept alone, like I had no idea that you know, that sort of mentality, like you're a whole person. You are more than a GPA. You are more than a test score.
Yes.
You like if a medical school is, you know, you're just if you fit and they're in what they want and what they need, you should definitely put yourself out there. Yep.
Absolutely. And the experience is priceless. Even if you don't get in, like the information that you get from that experience of just applying and like getting the information and getting like, you know, feedback, like that's actual feedback, not like, you know, random online information. So I'd always say just give yourself a shot.
Absolutely.
Always give yourself a shot. So,
absolutely.
But please continue. Sorry.
No. So I was explaining this to Dr. McDade, and he said, listen, I'm on call. So I'm just waiting for cases. Why don't you come up to the call room and we'll work this out. So So basically I talked and this man wrote. He wrote notes about what I said.
Oh wow.
That's amazing.
And I spent some hours there and we had a rough draft. We had a start, right? So I took that, I worked with it, and then I had a personal statement. And without that, I would never have started.
Yeah. Now you started the process. That's amazing.
Absolutely. And so went with that. And then it came down to actually putting the application in. Where should I apply? I talked to Dr. McDade again. He's like, I had selected some schools. He's like, Harvard's not on your list. Hopkins not on your list. Where's Columbia? You know, and I was like, well, Dr. McDade, I don't think I'll get into those schools. He's like, you better let them tell you no.
I love it.
You know?
Yes.
And so I still didn't listen to this man. I should have, but the energy that he gave me like that mojo to like, I can do this. I applied to several schools. I ended up getting interviews. And then the next hurdle for me was the secondary applications where they ask you for more and more essays. I was growing fatigued again. I couldn't do it. I had some friends who were also applying, so we would share drafts and like kind of compare ideas and things to talk about or write about. I had a mentor I was a psychology major. She was my psychology mentor. She also, again, helped me kind of put some pen to paper. Like, what about this idea? What about that? Can you go with this? And that also encouraged me to finish my secondaries. And funny enough, I never finished my application to Michigan.
Oh, really?
I never finished it. They gave me an automatic interview.
Oh, wow.
And had it not been for this automatic interview I got from Michigan, I would my story probably would be different. But it's like just kind of putting yourself out there. You put an application in, they see it, they review part of it. So I wouldn't know way to do it, but
yeah. I'm also hearing the importance of mentorship.
Yes. Yes.
How did you get in touch with this mentor, this physician? You had applied for that research program? Is that
So the research program I applied to, he was directing the research program, and there were 10 of us. He would sit down, a couple times a week and talk about aspects of, medical school, aspects of research. And so that was
that's amazing.
Unique opportunity for sure.
I know that's amazing because I did the same program at University of Chicago.
Did you?
I did. Yes. Back in 2002.
Wow.
Yeah. So like, I know exactly who you're talking about. I mean, this is a great program, like you just get this information and you're there with a cohort of people who are like interested in doing the same thing that you're doing. And it's just positive. It's just vibes. It's just positive vibes. And people are going to try their best and just give each other confidence. And I felt the same way when I did that program, I remember. So what's funny for me, I'm not sure if your program had people who are like not in medicine or not applying to like hard sciences. We had some people who were like trying to go into like law and some other stuff. Like that's how they did it for my year. But like you could just definitely tell the people who are doing like literature or something else, like they would just be sitting on the couch all day doing nothing. And then like the medicine people would have to like actually go in and do research and do lab research. And like, yeah, it was funny. Like we'd be coming home at like 6 and then like the other people were like, yeah, I didn't even go in today. Still in their pajamas. It's like, that's how it goes.
Definitely
though.
what you make of it, right?
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
less or you can do more. I was in the middle. The funny thing is it's a marathon. I think for me, I burned out a little bit too much in undergrad and med school studying really intensely. I wish I would have taken a little bit more time for me, a little bit more time to like relax and like do other things. Cause then I got to residency and I was just tired. And I was just like, so what do I need to do to finish? And
it sounds like you didn't take any time off, right? Like you kind of went straight through.
That's right.
Yeah. So straight through. I did straight through as well, and that's probably why I ended up in radiology. Just because I was like, I need to chill just for a second.
catch your breath.
And we make light of this, but actually our fields are quite difficult.
Yeah,
they are.
They definitely are. No, definitely are.
Absolutely.
I think physically maybe not as demanding as like other things, but definitely mentally, like you can definitely feel like mentally strained after like a long day in clinic and
absolutely,
reviewing path and doing surgery, like you could definitely feel that way. But like you still like, so tell us, like when you were at Michigan, how did you get interested in derm other than like Ken Doll saying you should not do OB?
So it's funny. People around me just kept saying, you should do a derm rotation. Like friends of mine, like a girlfriend of mine who was a year ahead of me said, you should really look into derm. My boyfriend at the time was like, derm, you might be derm. So I did the rotation 4th year, and I did it right after my peds sub-I, which is, kind of intense. I remember working long hours. The kids.
Yes.
And then dermatology was a different kind of intense because it was fast paced. Like they would schedule 60 patients in the morning or something, and they would have like 8 residents and 4 attendings, and everyone's running around just doing things and seeing people. And it was, and then you would sit in the grand rounds, and they would say all these names of diseases you've never heard of with multiple different words, and it's, like, it's information overload.
It really is. It really is.
I did not like it at first. I will say that I did.
Why not?
It seemed, like I said, overwhelming, and then there weren't any patients of color that much. Like the few that there were there, they just didn't. I didn't feel like they were really attended to in a meaningful way.
Interesting. Okay.
So then when I went to do another rotation at Henry Ford in Detroit, which is a predominantly Black hospital.
Yeah.
I saw patients who were suffering from all kinds of skin disorders, namely vitiligo. They have a vitiligo center there. Which I would say doesn't predominantly affect Black people, but when it does, it is striking because the distinction between the pigment of your normal skin and something that's completely lost its pigment, is very, very obvious and can make people sort of stigmatize other people. You'll see that those patients sometimes are treated like lepers, like don't touch me or something.
Yeah, so that's exactly right.
I went to a support group for patients with vitiligo, and these patients were giving testimony like they were in church. And I was very moved by that, and I wanted to be part of the team that helped them. So I got involved. I was doing research on vitiligo. I ended up writing a book chapter on the quality of life in patients with vitiligo, and just it went from there.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
This was like
So you were able to. I was just gonna say you were able to do an away rotation at Henry Ford,
Yes.
and that sometimes it's so useful to get out and see a different setting and see a different patient population.
mhm,
Um, and I remember feeling the same way in interventional radiology during my training. Like, at some point, I know the impact of a patient having an African American physician, or at
mhm.
least I can guess what the impact would be. And you want that, when you go into it, have that encounter because I think for a lot of us that's the drive, right? To
Right.
to make a difference and
Absolutely.
help decrease that gap in disparate care.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that makes sense. And like
I
also
definitely
just
experienced that all the time.
I was gonna say, I feel like just the when a patient has like a need for like a super subspecialist like yourselves, and then you walk in and you're African American just like them. I mean that sense of like comfort and relief is just it's just priceless. So
It
I mean the
is.
fact that you guys chose to do these type of things is so important, so important. So
You definitely feel that from your patients on a daily basis, who
hmm
are
hmm
just tickled to see that you're, you know,
Right?
that you look like them.
That's
Absolutely.
so true. Tickle.
Yes.
Then you get
exactly,
you get a
exactly.
you're the
Yes.
doctor. Oh yeah, yes I am. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that feeling's priceless. That feeling's absolutely priceless. So I was gonna say, like, so you basically applied for derm and kind of ended up in the original Detroit, Baltimore.
I know. I know. And I didn't think of it that way, but
Hmm
I got so enthralled by Hopkins.
Yeah.
I went to the interview. I was so excited. Another thing, the chief resident was Black. And I was just
hmm
like, hello, I've arrived, like, you know. And
Oh,
then
it's so
Yeah.
good.
in dermatology, it is not common to see Black physicians. And so to see
Hmm
that we had a chief resident was Black, there was also at the time another Black attending there as well. And then the
hmm
chair was Asian, but in dermatology, we think about skin of color, that includes Asians,
Uh-huh,
Indians,
uh-huh.
Hispanic
hmm
people. Like it's very broad, to see
Hmm.
that they have a really big emphasis on diversity and the care of diverse patients. And then Baltimore is 70% Black.
There you
Yep.
go.
Yeah.
So, I was just like, this is it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And were
Yeah.
you considering any other programs for derm, or you just once you were Hopkins, you're like, I'm
Once I
good.
saw Hopkins, I was most excited about that. And then, in Durham, you kind of try to get in where you can fit in.
Yeah.
It is tough to
Hmm
match. And so, I thought about staying in
Absolutely.
Michigan. At the time, I was considering New York as well or Texas, but Hopkins was my first choice, and ended up working out. And I'm still here
hmm
7 years later. So yeah,
To
that's it.
rank a program one in Durham and get into it, that's amazing. So
Yes.
It was shocking
tell
for
us
sure.
about your experience. Yeah, like how was it there at Hopkins? Like how did you like the training? Did you yeah, what did you like? What did you not like about it? What would you recommend for people who are interested
I
in
had a
Durham?
great experience at Hopkins. I
Hmm
honestly had amazing mentors.
hmm hmm
We had great experience in really getting to see skin disease in every type of skin, which is super important because it looks different.
Hmm.
hmm
Psoriasis in Black skin looks very different than in white skin. Same with rosacea. I could go on and on. And
hmm
so to
hmm
be able to really physically see it and have trained and know exactly what to look for is priceless.
hmm
I'd say that not every dermatologist has that. If you train in Iowa, you're not going to get that. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah, no, that
So
makes sense.
that is priceless, and I have that benefit still that I use all the time in working now. Um, Amazing mentors that I still call on, even just yesterday.
Oh, we have to hear their names. Who are these people? Who are your mentors that we can shout
So,
out here?
so Dr. Crystal Agu is one of my amazing mentors. Dr. Janetta Koye,
Shout out.
Dr. Annie Grossberg, program
Mm.
director extraordinaire, who I think
Very
Right.
nice.
retired from her role, but she was amazing when was in it, and she is still there now. Um, I called
Shout out.
Dr. Ron Swearing yesterday about a patient, you know. So I'm so grateful to have this tribe,
Yeah.
honestly, and then also my amazing co-residents that I trained with. We were
Mhm.
so close knit. We still are, and so those people got me through. Absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it.
So tell us a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day, and what you love about it. Because there are many things you can do within derm, and I just, do you have a niche? Do you have something that you particularly love?
Sure. So I'm strictly medical dermatology at Kaiser. I don't have the opportunity to do cosmetics right now. It may come, but you know that we always are focusing on trying to make sure we have good access for our patients who need help with their rashes, with their skin cancers. I have a wide gamut of patients. I see children even as young as a few weeks old up to elderly patients 97 this week.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's beautiful. It's kind of like family medicine, but just dermatology.
That's neat.
Yeah.
And I enjoy, it's funny. Sometimes I'll see entire families. I'll see parents for skin checks. I'll see, their children for acne or eczema or something like that. It ends up being, I've seen literally everybody in their family throughout the years. And so
Oh, that's
it's
so
a cool
good.
experience for sure. I'd say specialty wise, it's kind of funny how a specialty might choose you because you just see more and more of it. I ended up seeing a lot of patients with hair loss. I ended up seeing a lot of patients with pigmentary concerns, for example, hyperpigmentation, melasma, those kinds of things. I see a lot of hidradenitis, which is kind of like boils within the skin folds. I see a ton of acne. I have a lot of patients I treat with Accutane. And
Very
then
cool.
also I call it complex medical derm. That means patients who sometimes need systemic medications to treat their skin conditions. And so those patients require close follow-up. And so I mainly do medical dermatology. So not so much procedural dermatology, but although there's room for it if you want to do, surgeries for your patients who have cysts or skin cancers that need to be cut out. My time is a little bit more restricted. Not that I can't do it, but it's tight scheduling, and so not as much of that, but more medical dermatology, which I really enjoy quite a bit. I love just talking to my patients. I'm a bit of a chatty Cathy, and so I like connecting. I like seeing a patient like over and over again. Like I have patients I've been seeing since I started at Kaiser, and I see them, very regularly.
Oh, that's so cool.
And that's just like, being like, how is your granddaughter? I enjoy that personal connection with patients. And that might come from my dad because he's family medicine too.
Yeah, I was going to say that. But I'm sure your parents or your patients love that time that you take with them, just to have that conversation.
Yeah, we both enjoy it, I tell you, because it gets me through the day too. Because if it's just the medicine part, that gets a little bit rote. It gets a little bit, repetitive. We've been through that. We can do that in our sleep because of sheer volume. But like it's the personal touch that makes it.
That's important. Now it's like it seems like you've coupled like just having good conversations with doing medicine, which is, it's a way to happiness. So it sounds like you're very happy doing what you're doing. So that's great to hear.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So toughest thing you've encountered, you overcame, Tola, and how did you do it on this journey?
I think for me, it's the interpersonal relationships, especially during training, because I think that subjectivity can play a big role. But you have to kind of move past that and not let it define you, because not everybody will like you.
That's true.
And you can really let yourself be held down by that if you let it.
True.
But you have to try to push past that, be yourself, be true to who you are, and keep moving through.
That's so true. Don't let the system mold you. You try and mold the system as best you can, even if it's in a small increment.
Exactly.
And I think when you're up against curriculums, grades, succeeding, you could lose yourself on the journey. But I want to give you so much props for just staying true to who you are. It sounds like even though Ken Doll tried to hold you back, you let him have it and you kept going. I mean,
exactly.
That's all. That's his intimidation, right?
That's
And
right.
That's
so,
exactly right. That's his
Yeah.
insecurities. Exactly. That's exactly
Right.
correct. So,
Right.
well, we'll let you get out of here on this one. This will be our last question. So, what would you tell someone in undergrad or a medical student having a tough time? What would you tell them?
The most important thing you can do is find a mentor.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. That's
I
And
exactly
agree.
right.
multiple mentors too.
Yeah. Get different
Because
Yes.
perspectives.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I tell
Yeah.
you, I've had mentors who were not helpful. I've had mentors who sometimes, offer a perspective that you may not agree with or may not fit for you. You know?
Exactly.
But then when you get, multiple different opinions or different perspectives, and not everyone has to be in medicine. I've had extremely helpful mentors who were in other fields.
Oh, that's very cool. That's
So
very true. Yeah, no,
keep
that's
it
exactly
open.
right.
People who
Yeah.
don't look like you, right?
Exactly. No, different perspectives. That's exactly what you need. So, well, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for sitting down with us. And we're going to have you back because we have a lot more questions for you. But we really appreciate you making the time for us.
Of course. This was great.
No, thank you. And thank you for
Dr.
everyone for
Oyesanya.
listening. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Until next time, stay low and keep firing.